Kia ora, and welcome to Constellations and All That. I'm your host, Tracy Cartwright, and together we will be exploring the world of family constellations with facilitators and clients from around the world, looking at different perspectives and experiences in the work, having a cup of tea and just chatting with some friends around their experiences in constellations. We'd love for you to join us. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I have loved making it. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to Constellations and All That. Today, there's nice, beautiful, sunny weather here in Whangarei. I have the pleasure of chatting with Robin Woodsford. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this conversation.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
But my invitation is for you to introduce yourself a little bit about you, who you are, where you're based, and just some information for the viewers and the listeners to get a little bit more understanding of who you are.
Well, I'm based here at the top of the south, just about 40 minutes out of Nelson towards Mapua, and on a 3-acre block of land with a lovely old 1950s house, which we're sort of bringing into the 21st century, and an old garden and a lovely forest, an old property we found 5-6 years ago and thought, oh, this will work for us. I've been based in Christchurch since 1995 with my wife, Judy, and I. She's a home birth midwife, and she's been teaching students. I had a general practice as a psychotherapist. Breathwork has kind of been an important part of my whole practice, working with people on breathing in terms of stress, blood pressure, heart rate, the breath being so important in terms of detoxification. So I had a general practice in Christchurch for 23 years, and we had a little vineyard. As part of that, work with the head, work with the hands was a lovely combination. And I built a seminar room into our house in the vineyard and ran seminars there for the general public. That was a lovely environment, lifestyle. After 23 years, we went, vineyard, I think we're ready to move on. And we wanted to go somewhere a little warmer. So we looked at your area, Whangarei, north of Auckland, and we looked at the Coromandel, and we looked at the top of the south. We decided going through Auckland to get where you are is such a pain in the butt for ourselves and our friends that we just couldn't do it, although we love the area. Coromandel's great for holidaying. We have friends there, so we thought top of the south. So we spent 2 years and found this place, and we've been here since 2019. And I closed my general practice down. I thought I'll start writing some books, focus on some teaching work, seminars, constellation work. And within about 6 weeks, there's a knock on the door, and a local person said, "Oh, look, I've had to deal with a difficult suicide. Could I have a chat to you? I got your name off somebody," and away it went again. So yeah, I'm based here. Just published my first book last year. Got that done. Doing 3 or 4 constellations a year in the local area here, teaching some breathwork and seeing a few clients, not maybe 3 or 4 maximum. So it's just a nice balance.
And you work in you do this in a retreat center, is that right?
It's interesting, Tracy, when you go to an area where you don't really know anyone, it's a wonderful opportunity to do discovery work and discover who's out there. And of course, Nelson's been a bit of a hotbed of all sort of hippies and alternative and complementary life stuff, a bit like the Coromandel era since the 60s. And I remember coming up here as a student in the 60s and so forth. So there's a lot of artists, a lot of alternative complementary health practitioners, it's a lot of stuff happening. So for me, it was like, oh, who am I going to meet? And I have a saying that goes, a stranger is just someone you feel strange with. Everyone else is an opportunity for an adventure, and you never know what that adventure might be or who you're going to meet. So I've just discovered the Ruby Bay Retreat Centre within about 6 months. Well, actually, they discovered me through another friend and said, so we got chatting, and I really liked what they were doing. They do retreats for people around addiction, but also they broadened out now into all sorts of stuff, not just addictions. So
Fantastic.
there's a team of us have developed around Ruby Retreat, and I'm part of that team. So they bring us in. There's equine, there's counselling, there's constellation work, there's breath work, there's yoga, there's swimming. They're doing wonderful things. So I'm kind of working through there, and under their umbrella, we're doing constellation work and putting out things. And I'm just supporting, I guess at 76, I'm going, how do I support the next generations coming through? How do I be in conscious eldership with all this? I'm not going to sit in a rocking chair and fade away on the deck.
Yeah.
And I'm not a golfer and I'm not a fisher. So what do I do with my time that's useful, practical?
Create a legacy.
Yeah. Well, I
Quietly.
hadn't thought of that. Yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
guess the
that's what you're
legacy
doing,
is
though, isn't
in
it?
the
If you,
garden and the land. But yeah, pass on. I've learned so much. I'm amazed at how much I've learned. And
Mm.
how much I just realized I just still don't have no idea on this so much. I think Einstein said, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. So I'm in this wonderful stage of going, what do I do with this and who do I share it with? And how do
Yeah.
I value my time
Yeah.
in terms of giving it?
Mm. Mm. That's wonderful. I love that concept too of the Ruby Retreat and what they're doing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was lovely. I mean, they're in their 40s, they're just going for it and they're exploring. And it's just lovely to be able to support competent, good work that you find
Mm.
around the place
Yeah.
and nourish that. And
Great.
yeah,
So, how did you get into constellations? How did you first hear about it, or how did it find you?
well, that's an interesting journey. I trained in psychodrama in Christchurch in the late 70s, early 80s, and got into Joseph Marino and the early kind of stuff happening. I did all the modules I could in Christchurch and had to go to Auckland to do the more advanced modules because we're the last bus stop before the South Pole. It often comes from Germany or America, and eventually someone comes down here in a boat and demonstrates what they've been doing over there and so
Mm.
forth. So there's a guy, Max Clayton, based in Australia, and he'd been doing stuff, and people here had trained, and then I was doing had to go to Auckland. So I went to Auckland, was heavily into that. And then I discovered breathwork while I was up there. And that took me on a journey of exploring how to work with the breath in a psychotherapeutic setting.
Mm.
So I left New Zealand in end of 87 and did a whole lot of international work for a while. Did a breathwork training, psychotherapy training based out of New York and stayed there for 6 years and came
Wow.
back in 1995 and joined the New Zealand Association of Breathworkers here. And in 1998, a woman called Nemi Nath came from Australia, a German woman. I think it was, she'd taken a name, Nemi Nath. I think it was a Sanskrit name she'd taken. She came in at our conference in Wellington, presented this family constellation process, which she picked up in Germany, I think. And we were like, wow, this is, oh, the breath takes you down into the soul, into the energy of the universe, out of the intellect and working stuff out in the ego. And constellation work very clearly took you down into the field where, what needs to be discovered will be discovered. What comes up
Yeah.
needs to be found will be found when we get the chattering ego out of the way. And I was like, wow. So a couple of us went back to Christchurch and we want to know more about this. Well, there's no one really doing much in '98, I think, in New Zealand at that stage that we could find. So we invited Nemi to come back and do some stuff with us in Christchurch. So we just paid her to come over and teach us how to use the process and work with it. And then people started to come to Auckland in the early 2000s. I think Goonie Backside did some stuff with her and
Did you know
psychology.
Angelica Chisel?
That's where I met Angelica. She was part of that first. We
Yeah.
kind of teamed up together. I think I met her. There was a guy, Chris, somebody or other, a
Walsh.
psychiatrist
Chris
from us.
Walsh.
Can't remember his name. He did something there. I met Angelica up there on a couple of things.
So
And
Chris Walsh was from Melbourne.
can't remember. I just remember. my approach is, if you want to learn something, if you want to learn how to cook, go and get in the kitchen with the best cooks you can find and start learning
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
jumping in. So I kind of, that first 2, 3, 4 years was just discovering stuff, training opportunities, learning more. And then it was a natural step for me from psychodrama into family constellation work. It was very, very easy. It was like, I do remember getting a little frustrated with the role changing in psychodrama work and the slight clunkiness of that. And that's a fantastic process. What I enjoyed with constellation work is just getting into that flow of the field, of just being with the energy and trusting the kind of knowing that comes from that. So that was a little bit of, that's how it started for me. And of course, I'm working with clients, so you immediately start using this as a tool. I found for me, choose something off my shelf that could represent your mother and put it somewhere and using the process. I was also running each year I ran a program called Homecoming, which was a 6 or 7 month program, 7, 8 weekends, where I took a group of 20 people, just the general public, often my clients and people who heard about it, through a program of starting with your conception, your birth, your gestation, your infancy, childhood, adolescence, and looking at what happened to you along that way, along that journey, God, sex, money, all the important things. And
Mm.
a once a month program, a weekend. And as one of those weekends, I did a constellation weekend and I gradually developed what I've called a family of origin constellation, which is just saying to people, if the first constellation that I would support you to do is lay your own family out in its wonderful, dysfunctional, normal disorder and see what we've got, and then move it through into its order so everyone finds their right place and the energy flows again in the family. And you're not doing it to change your family, you're doing it to get the flow for yourself, and whatever happens to your family happens to your family.
Sorry, are you doing this with figurines or
With people,
with people?
yeah.
Beautiful.
So with a group of 20, someone to represent your father, someone to represent your mother, whoever's in your family. And I'd work usually about an hour and a half for each person.
Hmm.
And just your family of origin. Let's just get that in order. Let's see where the energy's been stuck and see if we can play with it and get it into a place. And for me, it was my first experience of Hellinger work, whereas, this is my right place. I'm, order. I'm number one. I'm number two. I'm number three. I'm number four, and I come before you. The orders of love. So
Mm.
I'm a big fan of that. So I would do that, and I did that every year. And then people started to go, "Oh, I love this work. Can we have more?" So it kind of developed its own.
And
Um,
it is, isn't it? You get this, and I know for myself, like as soon as I met the work, it was like, oh, I want more of this.
mm,
So have some people that fans of the work, we'll call them. When
well, yeah,
they come often, they don't always want to do a piece of work. They just sometimes just want to come and be a representative or
exactly.
hold space and witness. Mm.
Well, I think it brings people home. It brings us home to that deeper. We're kind of so split now in our society where the
Mm.
outside world is such a strain on people that it's creating so much stress.
Mm.
What I notice, in order for people to live today, and I'm just talking about an ordinary life where you can put a roof over your head, have some food, find some meaningful work, and some people to love and connect with. The strain that is on people just to achieve that is creating a massive amount of stress. And I see strain as different from stress. I
Mm.
think we need to understand that stress is the result of when you strain something enough. An engineer will tell you, you strain a piece of timber, you strain it, and get to a certain point, it will go kabang, a building. Well, we're the same. So there's this, I see the strain on people, and it's going, whoa, 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 let's just stop and breathe and come down and be. And constellation work allows that to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
just a wonderful, let alone whatever it resolves. And I think our ego wants to fix everything. But actually, we really, if we sunk down into the true nature of the universe and ourselves, we don't need fixing. We just need to learn to play again. So
Mm.
I think constellation allows us to experience that. And I think a lot of people enjoy that.
Yeah. I've noticed that in constellation work, it really has had a huge effect on my nervous system
Mhm.
in such a
Mhm.
positive way. It's like, you're talking about strain and stress. So my nervous system was so wound up. I think it was,
Mhm.
there were some big cracks in it. And and slowly it's unwinding. And
Yes,
and I might
yes.
get to a layer where I'm coming back to one of those things that need a little bit of attention. And you get there. And so slowly I'm coming back into what would be, I guess, your ultimate perfect alignment, which my body probably hasn't been in since I was very little, maybe, even if it was.
Mm,
And I have a much deeper connection to myself and a sense of belonging within myself.
that's right. I call it coming home.
Mm, yeah, that's beautiful.
When you're home, you watch a sunset. Look, I've worked all around the world doing this kind of work. I've sat around a fire in Russia. I've sat around a fire in Spain. I've sat around a fire on the West Coast. The same thing happens. You look at the stars around the fire out in the country, you look at the stars, you're around the fire, and everyone goes, far out, look at that. And there's this, doesn't matter what race, what culture,
Mm,
feeling's the same. And we come home to, wow, we're part of something that is so amazing. And we feel that the rest of life can pull us out into this madness that we are
mm,
very good at adapting to. You gradually wound yourself into that place without even noticing it. And the
mm.
wonderful news is you do notice it and go, actually, I need to, and constellation work can give you an experience of going, oh, gosh, exactly as you were saying.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So on a if you were having a conversation with someone who'd never met family constellations, how would you describe it?
Mm.
What's your elevator pitch? Your speech or
Yeah,
pitch,
people
whatever.
say, oh, what is constellation work? And what I find myself saying, well, the way I work with constellation work and what I think it is, it's about working with the energy that lies underneath us, that lies below us. That the physical world is actually, there's not, we tend to think that there's two worlds. There's kind of the physical world and then there's that other spiritual world sort of thing. But actually the physical world is the result of the invisible world.
Mm,
And the invisible world, which is the world Einstein worked and spoke of, is the world of energy. And everything in the universe is just energy. And energy is the movement of life. So when we're up on the mechanical world, paying the mortgages and working, we're in that kind of mechanical world, swimming along on that top part. But actually, there is a deeper world, the one that we talked about sitting around the fire, that we stand in that one and we get caught up in the other one. So constellation work allows us to drop out of that and come down into that deeper world, which actually, when we get that deeper world in alignment, the physical one works a lot better because the two are a reflection of each other. So for example, as a psychotherapist, I've often found over the years I'm working with people on stuff they're trying. It could be relationship stuff or whatever it is. They're trying to nut it out and work it out. We're doing some good work. We've often found that actually the reason things are out of alignment up at that level is because something deeper is out of out of place, out of sync. So all good psychotherapists in the end do start to look at the field underneath and go, why, what's the cause? We peel the onion. And I mean, if you look at Jung's work, he did a lot of work on the spiritual field, so to speak. The world that's unseen that lies beneath the physical world. They are just a reflection of each other. So constellation work is a very practical way to just have a look at what's going on underneath that's causing the bubbles to happen on the surface above. And I just say to people, it's very practical, it's very simple. Your average joker wandering off the street, And we can say, let's have a look at your family. How are you doing with your family? Who are you having fun with? Who are you not having fun with? And we
Mm.
go, okay, well, let's get them here and let's start playing with where's the energy? And it's amazing what happens, of course, as you know,
Yeah.
when we start to listen to what's going on underneath the surface, there's real treasure down there, real
Mm.
wonder, and amazing healing for people and balance. All Indigenous people will tell you the same thing,
Yes,
that,
absolutely.
you know, come down to the whenua. When you connect with country, when you connect with the land, and you begin to feel and be with that, you'll know what to do.
I
So,
think we are taught, aren't we, or we're programmed these days, and it's been over time, over generations,
mm,
to be here and not
mhm,
to be, well, in the heart, which connects us down to
mm,
the
mm.
greater field of things as well. So, and
And
part of
that's really
it,
important. You
yeah.
know, that's the piece for me. All the work I've done, I mean, I helped set up Youth Line when I was 21 years old, and I got a taste for counselling. I became a youth worker,
Mm,
and I love working with people. So I've spent my life working with people in groups. One thing that's very clear to me that happens to all human beings, and this is quite normal, but it's not necessarily functional. When children get fearful or get frightened and have a scary experience or something fearful happens to them, if there's nobody around to support them and be with them to help process that, they want to get away from that feeling. So they go up. And
mm,
there's a pattern of going away from the emotion, from the feeling, the energy that's felt in the body to try and work it out. And so what happens with children, because we've not been good around attachment and nourishment, and particularly for Europeans who descended from the English culture where emotions are not highly valued or
mm,
recognized. What happens is you have an adult who's learned to move away from feelings and go up and work stuff out. And so we spend our lives trying to work stuff out as opposed to just feel it because our first experience of it was too scary to feel it. No, there was not an elder there that said, it's okay. You're just feeling some funny feelings, and that's normal. It's the same as when you go to the edge of a cliff and you look over and go, "Woo." It's just tied up with competition at school and kids being a bit silly, and it doesn't mean if there's no one to help you work through that, well, what do?
yeah. You're
You
trying
run
to make
away
sense
from it.
of it yourself, right? And it becomes this big swirling
That's
pool
right.
of
That's right.
stuff.
So we numb out and we go upstairs, and then we become only alive from the neck up, working everything
Yeah.
out, figuring everything out. Yep, 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 yep. Only to crash at some point because to be human means to be feel. This means to feel. To be
Mm.
human means to feel. It's the
And
one.
it's interesting that what that word that you just said, to numb out, because there's often there's the substances that we take, right?
Yeah.
My and I just got a flash of my mum's mum. She well, she wasn't taking drugs that I know of, but she was very numb, very disassociated,
Mm.
and I guess for her, her poison was sugar.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
and she freely handed that one out. Yeah, and
Well, we
and
do what we need to do to survive, whether it be
yeah,
sugar
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
alcohol. They're real primitive survival techniques for traumatized children, traumatized
Mm,
people.
mm.
And I think I've come to understand more recently, we're actually a highly traumatized species who's only just beginning to recognize how traumatized we are. It's been rough on this planet. It's been really rough. And it still is for a lot of people.
Yeah,
We tend to think we're in this Western liberal, safe, kind of nice, advanced culture. But we're still in survival. And COVID began a process of shifting us out of that back into where we've been for a long, long, long time prior to 1945.
yeah. I think for some people it shifted them in a different direction, but the majority of people started to shift. Yeah.
Yeah, it's opened the door on a lot of on a shift into, well, hang on a minute, if we're going to have 7 billion people living together on the planet, how are we going to be together that works? and
Mm,
only cooperation is going to work. And
mm,
we're a long way from that. So constellation work for me is a wonderful way to teach people how to cooperate together. That actually we're all. I am my brother's keeper. I am. I said, I'm you. You're me. It's just energy.
mm.
We're in it
Have you
together.
have you got any examples of the work that you would feel comfortable in sharing, obviously without anyone's confidentiality being crossed,
What are you
or
thinking
maybe
of,
something of
Tracy?
your own? Maybe there's an example of something that you've seen a really big shift, like what was the reason that it was being looked at, and what was maybe what happened, or I don't know.
Yeah. It's I've there's lots of well, let me think of something that's succinct. Doing a constellation with a guy who's he was his father was a Dutch immigrant that came out from Holland after the Second World War as a young man and came to New Zealand and married somebody here, and so I and had some children. One of whom was this man I was working with, who was in his 40s. And so he was just looking at where the energy got stuck in his family and where he was in his relationships. He'd gone through a separation, and he was processing where he was at. So we ended up working with him, and then we had his dad who'd emigrated, and then we brought in his grandfather. And what emerged was that his father was 11 years old somewhere or other during the war, somewhere around 11 or 12. And the last time he saw his father, who was the person who's doing the constellation's grandfather,
Mhm.
was his father said to him, "You need to get out the back window. I think the Germans are coming and we might be in trouble." So this 11 or 12-year-old, which is my client's father,
Yeah.
and Holm, climbed out the back window, and that was the last time he ever saw his father. And
Wow.
he disappeared somewhere or other into the German war machine and so forth. And it was really interesting unraveling the complete loss that he was on his own, had to find his
Mhm.
way. I don't remember what happened, but we did a whole process with him reconnecting with his grandfather and working on that split, that incident,
Mm.
that powerful. And I remember it was very interesting for my client to look at that. He just had tears rolling down his face as they worked through that piece. And he said, I never realized what my father went through. I've just been pissed at him for da 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 da. And it was a massive, it was a whole and I remember feeling it myself. Even telling you again, I was like, I felt quite, there was sadness, there was outrage, there was just a
Yeah.
deep loss. I don't know where the mother was. It was I can't remember the details, but suddenly this he never saw his father again. He's 11. That was it. Comes to New Zealand after the war, I think as an orphan or a I don't know what it was. I can't remember the details. Has a family, has great difficulty relating to his son because
Mm.
what have I got to give my son? I'm in survival myself. He'd not gone into any form of therapy to deal with his own loss of what happened to him, climb out the back window and never see your family again.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you handle that?
Exactly.
So that was an incredibly powerful. I remember that there's lots and lots wonderful, rich stories that come out of healing the interrupted energy.
Mm.
It's just the life journey. Shit happens. That's I used to have a vineyard. Used to make some fine wine. And one of the things is when you're growing grapes, if you put a little bit of stress on the grapes, they go, "Ooh, we better perform. We better get some juice going here because we don't want to die off." But if you put too much stress, you damage them. So there's a fine, and I think we're the same. We need a little bit of oomph to push us along because we need to grow because
Mm.
we kind of we're a bit lazy, so we need a little bit to oomph us along, but we don't need too much. So that whole balance working the levels of strain and stress on people creates a whole process of survival. So we've got this wonderful game that we're playing as a species. Who makes it out the end of the chute in one piece?
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, that's why I'm, it's just so grateful for this week. And I'm
Mm,
constantly amazed. I'm always pleasantly surprised about what shows up and when we give it the space, what can be released and what can be unentangled or, yeah.
yes. And it's so simple because country, Mother Nature, the laws of the universe, they tell us what we need to do if we can listen to them.
Mm.
I was doing some work the other day, and there was a massive thunderstorm you might have seen here in Nelson, and Nelson got flooded. And there was water bubbling up through shops, and they go, "Oh God, here we go again." And I was thinking, that's country, that's the land telling you something.
Mm.
When you go tramping, you don't pitch your tent down beside the river unless there's a drought on. You always go for high ground. So we
Yeah.
build these lovely cities like Nelson all along the river, and it's beautiful and it's lovely. But it is the catchment for the Richmond Ranges, which is a massive area. And so Mother Nature says, this is where you put your house. This is not where you put your house. So if we can just listen, country, land, it tells us what we need to do and where we need to be. But we don't listen. We listen to our own pictures,
Mm.
which are quite distorted as a result of our traumas. And we do all sorts of nutty stuff and then go, why did that happen to me? So,
Which emotionally, if you think of that in an emotional sense, or, like, because the waters being the emotions, right? The
mhm,
flowing of the waters within us. Often we are on the banks of the river when we are in our trauma, in our PTSD, or in our anxiety and depression, right? We are pitched on the banks of the river, and we have to find our way up to higher ground to be able
that's
to
right.
observe it without being washed away by it.
Oh, nothing more frightening than being caught in that,
Mm.
being overwhelmed. Yep. So I've always looked for tools that can take me into the deeper truth, the breath, psychodrama, just processes, meditation, stillness, gardening, family constellation work. What can take us into?
Was this something that was of interest within your family system? Were you the psychedelic sheep within your system?
No, look, I was the angry kid. I'm an only child. Look, my mother went off. I've told my story in my book about my journey as a baby boomer, looking at the whole baby boomer generation. But in simple terms, my mother went off and married. She was from a staunchly Catholic family, married a non-Catholic, disapproval, all that stuff back, and then went up to Auckland and promptly got stuck 21, 22, depressed and long way from home. And thought, I'll have a baby and that'll make things better. And so I arrived and it got worse, and we all ended up in hospital and stuck and so forth. And long story short, the relationship collapsed. And so my mum was a solo mum by the time I was 15 months old. Never saw
Wow.
my father again. She was kind of sort of shut away in her her father's place back down in Christchurch. So I grew up there, and it was just I was going to be the living proof that she hadn't failed. So the pressure was on me to be a good boy. And
Mm.
of course, the more pressure there was, the more I pushed back. I didn't know that, so I was just very angry at I didn't who where's my no one told me where my father was and who he was, and it was all this religious stuff and Catholic stuff, and it just the rebel. I pushed back
Yeah.
against that stuff. So for me, it was like no, no, no. So I was also, my nervous system had been pretty disturbed through that first experience. Disastrous attachment with my mother. She fell apart. So mothership, I got disconnected. So pretty ADHD kid. The nun said, "Oh, little Robin, he's just highly strung. He's just highly strung. Can't sit still." And
Mm.
what some years later, I recognised, oh, that was actually ADHD. Mild dyslexia, love reading, but often get things around the wrong way and go to the wrong address and get dates mixed up. And And of course, Push was angry about that because the harder I tried, the more I got the numbers wrong. And look, I worked really hard for school cert in maths. I had a math tutor and I got 11 out of 100. So it's like, so you're under that pressure of what are you doing wrong? So I came out, and by the time I'm 18 and 19, I'm angry and frustrated.
Mm.
And then it's the 60s. And we go, well, screw you, Vietnam War, no thank you. Da, 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 da. So I got involved in youth work, youth groups. What I
Mm.
noticed is when I was helping people, I felt better. And I thought that was interesting. So I trained as a school teacher. 3 months before graduation, I got a year's leave of absence and got a job as a youth worker and never went back. And I've been involved in the people group, external change, and then internal change.
Mm.
So that's what I've been interested in, and that's what fired me up. Nothing like a crappy start to life to get a fire under your butt
Yeah, I
and
think,
get some support to
that
get
gives us
through it.
many resources, eh?
Mm, yeah,
Once you start working through those things that were once uh the triggers or the things that
yeah,
activated us or the things that's blocked us, and we can look at them, then they become our resources.
yeah. I think we either become a victim of our circumstances or we don't. And a lot of people, victimhood is very popular on the planet and is very much supported by religions, unfortunately. And I think we've had 2,000 years of going off on a victim tangent with religion.
Mm,
And I would lay at religious field people group at their door the idea to examine that victimhood actually keeps people in a form of servitude and slavery,
yeah.
because in the end we are the masters of our own destiny, but until we understand that, we're stuck.
Mm,
So yeah.
mm. So, just out of my own curiosity, did you ever find your father?
Funnily enough, my mother died of stomach cancer at 53. I nursed her for 3 months until she took her last breath. I was there with her, and it was an amazing process. 10 days before she died, she pulled out a brown envelope and said, "This is your father, this is what happened." Da, 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 da. And after an hour, I just had this 10-year-old in my arms crying, saying, "I never had a mother." Her mother had tuberculosis. And when she was born, she was immediately separated from her mother. So she never saw her,
Mm, wow.
never connected with her. And I think there'd been some sexual abuse for her. She'd never had anybody. And I just ended up with this 10-year-old in my arms crying.
Mm,
I never had a mother. And I'd done my own therapy by then and realized my mother was a deeply wounded human being that I didn't need to be angry at. Yeah, I had a deal that she was going to be the mother, and I was pissed that she didn't turn up. But when I figured out why she didn't turn up, my compassion was able to come forward. And
mm,
so we had a wonderful completion. And about 3 weeks after that, a letter arrived for me from my father, and I'll never forget. He said, "I received the news of her death in my classroom today. Nothing will ever erase the pain of a failed marriage, but I'd love to see you." And it was like, wow. So I was 30 and I met him, and we connected, and their two stories kind of amalgamated together. He died 10 years after I met him, had a heart attack in his car. I think he was 64.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've really outlived your parents, haven't you?
Yeah, I have to think about that. I think, yeah, yeah. My youngest is 26. He's born when I was 49. I said, "I'll do your deal. I'll be here till you're 40, then I'll review it. That'll make me 90." So we've got a deal going.
Done. Well done.
Yeah, put it
Oh,
out there.
well, what a bonus that you're for your children that you've been able to do all this work, and then you're also opening the doors for others to do the healing too, hey?
Mm, mm. I mean, it couldn't be otherwise. This is
Mm,
life. This is just
yeah,
life, and the
yeah.
exploration of life.
And just for the listeners, just so you know, we are humans as well as facilitators that, and there's still stuff that rolls up, right?
Absolutely.
None of our families are perfect, and none of our systems are, and we're an
Well, I often say to my client, yeah, yeah, Tracy, So well said.
Yeah.
I often say to my clients, the certificate on the wall just tells you I've done a course. My real qualification is that I've been to the bottom of my barrel too, and I've come back up again. So I know a little bit about going down there and what you can do to move through it.
Mm.
And otherwise, I think it's a form of arrogance. I remember Jung gave a talk to some German doctors, and he said, if you think you're the one who has it together and you're ministering to the one who doesn't have it together, there's an arrogance there that will eventually kill your career or trap you. We need
Mm.
to acknowledge we're all fallible, we all have stuff, and it's in the engagement of that that compassion and empathy develops and your ability to really be with people on the healing journey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Oh, I could talk to you for ages, Robin. I mean, we've only met this year in April, but
I know. Yeah,
there's
that's right.
there's an ease there. So, um, like a really easeful connection and relationship and in this
Well, I'd have to say it was,
availability.
yeah, that I comment on that, that I'd just been busy submerged down here in the south doing what I've been doing. And I hadn't ventured up to Auckland to know Angelica. I think she went, which was the only options to do any training in New Zealand really was to go to Germany if you wanted to do the full-on thing. And I know she went and did that, and really hats off to her. And she's come back and delivered all that stuff to you guys up there, and you've just gone for it. So I've been busy, and then I went, oh, what's this immersion thing that's going on that I discovered? And I went, oh, I'm into that. I didn't know what they were doing up that other world up north. And so I jumped into the immersion and discovered there's a whole wonderful couple of generations have grown out of the stuff in the 90s. And you've trained with Angelica, and then you've been training people, and they're now out there. So I go, what a wonderful thing that was to see. And I really acknowledge you for that. The energy and the life that you guys have, and you in particular, Tracy, go for it. It's wonderful for me to see. And
Thank you. Thanks.
gratitude.
Yeah, I just love this work, and I think that the more people we can share it with too, the
Yeah.
more, and there's so much of it needed in so many different angles and areas, and a little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's definitely, I hadn't thought of offering, teaching anyone because I've been so busy, but through the Ruby retreat, people started to say, how can we learn some more about constellation work? And I thought, oh, maybe I have to stop just doing the stuff I'm doing and offer some training options. So I'm beginning to do that now. So I've got one coming up at the end of July. I'll do Friday night, Saturday, do some families, then on Sunday have a training day on how just experiencing the process, how it works, some of the theory, and people who are interested can go a little deeper, and then we'll have a look at what are options moving forward from there.
Yeah, and if you feel to, tell them about Ansky, and there's always
Yes,
information. We're putting information up all the time.
passing
Um,
that on I mean, that's the nice thing. I can work away here locally, and then there's this springboard of a deeper pond and pool for people. So I've got a few people lined up for next year. So looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
Mm.
Beautiful. Forward to seeing you there as well.
So
And potentially presenting, maybe.
we'll see what the universe delivers. I'm open. I'm available. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good for people to see, different facilitators and yeah,
Well,
I'd love
isn't
to
that
see
the
you work.
richness? Yeah.
Mm.
Isn't that the richness of constellation work? It's so varied where each facilitator goes
Mm.
with what they're able to. It's like artists, painters. They look at the landscape and they'll all paint a different painting, but it'll be the same landscape, but in a different way. They'll all capture something that's
Yeah.
particular, or
Yep.
photographers. So I love constellators, just the variation and the richness that comes from all the different paths into the field that a facilitator will
Mm.
go down to find.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that richness.
Many roads lead to Rome, hey, as the saying goes.
Yeah, to the
Mm.
field.
So if someone wanted to get hold of you in your beautiful little haven that you have down there in the top of the South Island. How would someone get in touch with you?
I've got a website, robinwoodsford.co.nz. Gets me to, it's a bit of a website around my book primarily, but they can contact me there. New Zealand Association of Breathworkers, I'm listed there, or through the Ruby Bay Retreat Centre, through there. So it's kind of three portals: website, Association of Breathworkers, and Ruby Bay Retreat Centre. And
Beautiful. So I think we'll leave it there. It's so good to talk to you, and really grateful that you've been able to take this time and share, and yeah,
pleasure.
a wealth of knowledge there, Robin. Look forward to to spending more time with you next year, and who knows, maybe I'll get down and get to experience some of your work down your way as well. I'd love
There's
to.
always a bed here. There's
Yeah,
always a
yeah.
bed here. Yeah, yeah, lovely. No, love sharing the journey and really appreciate your energy and all that you've given, Tracy, and do give. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
much appreciated. Thank you for listening. Head over to Instagram and tell me what's resonated for you with this episode. You'll find me at tracy.cartwright. That's Tracy with no E, .cartwright. Or head over to my website, tracycartwright.co.nz, and receive a free audio with the gift from your ancestors. So until next time, be kind to yourself and have fun doing it.